Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday. What we're going to do today is we're going to learn something new called the Pythagorean theorem. And some of you may have heard of this before or seen this before. It's the a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And this is a formula or a theorem or an equation, it's all three, that is used only for right triangles. All right. So as we start our definition of the Pythagorean theorem, we're going to say in a right triangle, okay, the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides. So that's what you have here in a squared plus b squared equals c squared. If you look down here at the characteristics of a right triangle, it has three sides. So you have side A and side B. So that is the sum of the squares of the two sides. And then you have side C, which is the hypotenuse, which is the square of that side, the c squared. So as we look here at the characteristics of a right triangle, the right triangle has three sides to it. So what we call the legs are sides A and B. All right. So sides A and B, right here and here, are what we call the legs of a right triangle. And the characteristics of the hypotenuse is side C. Okay? So the legs are A and B, and the hypotenuse is over here, side C. So let's talk about three things about the hypotenuse. The first thing we're going to notice about the hypotenuse is it's always side C. So whenever you are looking at your Pythagorean theorem and you start substituting values in for the A, the B, or the C, whatever side is the longest side is always going to be side C, which is your hypotenuse. Okay? And that's going to be important later on when you get some problems that you're just given two sides of a right triangle and you have to determine which side is missing and what the measurement is of that missing side. Okay? So that's the first thing, is it's always side C. The next thing is the hypotenuse is always across from the right angle. So if you look here again, your right angle symbol is right here. It means that this angle measures 90 degrees. And across from that right angle is the hypotenuse, which is side C. And it is always going to be there across from the right angle. Okay? Then for number 3, the hypotenuse is always the longest side. So whenever you're looking at measurements of your right triangle, it's always going to be the longest side. It's always going to be across from the right angle, and it's always going to be side C. So if you look here, we have 3 examples of right triangles where we're told we need to find the length of the hypotenuse. Now, what I want you to do is to do these 3 examples on a sheet of paper, and then I want you to use that same sheet of paper to do the practice work that's included with this assignment so I can see that you did these examples with me. All right, so what I'm going to do then is I'm going to pause the video for a moment and go to my Canvas page and show you how to solve these right triangles for side C. Okay then, so our first right triangle had legs of 3 and 4, and we're trying to solve our hypotenuse, which is side C over here. So what I'm going to do is take my Pythagorean theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and I'm simply going to substitute the numbers that I know into this theorem and solve for the missing side. So my legs are A and B. So I'm going to put 3 in for A, so I have 3 squared plus 4 squared, and all of that equals to c squared. Okay? Now remember, when I have an exponent, that means how many times that number is multiplied by itself. So 3 squared means 3 times 3. it does not mean 3 times 2. So 3 times 3 is going to be 9, plus 4 times 4, which is 16, and all of that equals c squared. So then 9 plus 16 is going to be 25, and that's going to equal c squared. Now, as I taught you last week, the opposite or the inverse of an exponent is the square root function. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take the square root of 25, because by doing so, I can isolate the variable c by itself. So when I take the square root of both sides, those cancel out. So I'm left with the square root of 25. And if I come over here to my calculator, I've already done it for you. The square root of 25 is 5. So second function key x squared, 25, enter. The square root of 25 is 5. So that means c equals 5. So you'll notice that, as we talked about on the previous page, the hypotenuse is my longest side because we have 3, 4, and it's 5. It is across from my right angle as well, and it's also c. So that's our first example. So if you want to, you can go back and write down the second example in your notebook. And this one was 12 and 5. And again, I'm looking for my hypotenuse. So again, I start with a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So my a side is 12, so I have 12 squared plus 5 squared equals c squared. So again, 12 squared means 12 times 12, not 12 times 2. So 12 times 12 is 144, plus 5 squared, or 5 times 5, which is 25, and all of that equals c squared. So now I add the two numbers together, so 144 plus 25 is going to be 169 equals c squared. So then the next thing that I do is I take the square root of both sides, so that way I can isolate that variable c by itself. And since this is the inverse operation, they cancel each other out. So I'm left doing the square root of 169. So if I come over here to my calculator, second function key, and I get 13. So for that problem, c equals 13. So again, c is my longest side, 5, 12, 13. It's also across from my right angle. All right, so the final example. So here's my right triangle. I have this side which measures 8 and this side which measures 15. So I'm trying to solve for my hypotenuse, which is c. So again, I have a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So I'm simply going to substitute the numbers that I already know. So my a value will be 15 squared plus the b value, which is 8 squared. And all of that equals c squared. So 15 times 15, or 15 squared, gives me 225. So I have 225 plus 8 times 8 is 64. So all of that equals c squared. So now when I add 225 plus 64, I get 289. Which equals c squared. So at this point, I take the square root of both of these numbers. And when I do that, those two cancel out. So I come over here, and the square root of 289 equals 17. So again, if I look at this problem, I see that my longest side is 17, which is my hypotenuse, and it's also across from my right angle, and it was c in my equation. Okay, so what I would like for you to do is to complete the rest of the practice problems on your own. It is simply finding hypotenuses, and when you're done, as you know, scan it or take a photo and upload it to Google Classroom so I can see and grade your work. Make sure you turn in the guided notes as well, because that is the entire assignment for the day. And if you need some additional help with this, come up on Google Meet and I can give you some more help between 11 and 1. Or if you need me to help you outside those hours, I certainly can. All right, everybody, have a great day.